All right, that's better.
Yeah.
No, I see. I see what it is. I was plugged into the mic before, which is probably better for monitoring my levels, but it's really annoying.
Okay.
I can do it though if it's better for
It
monitoring the levels.
it makes a big difference.
All right. Hold on.
Like, it's annoying, but apparently you do get over it. Everyone who does podcasts says so.
All righty.
Did I get a text or did you get a text?
I got a texter. I'll turn off my texters.
You don't have to do that. Is it anyone important? Or you answer the text on air? Let's do that.
Wait, how's the bleed though?
It's gone.
Okay. So find our poems. So I'll just go to our website.
Are you recording?
Captain Laser was very good.
Oh yeah, everybody loves that guy.
You know?
Wait, are you recording or no?
You there?
Yes, hello? Hello?
Greggy.
I can hear you.
Where'd you go, Greg? Gregster.
Hello, can you hear me talking? Man, I am talking.
I cannot hear you.
Talking.
Why can I not hear you anymore?
Talking.
Why cannot I hear you? Greggy?
Hello.
Wait, there you are. Oh, I know what the problem is. God damn it.
What?
Alright. Okay, Greggy.
Yes.
Alright, good. Ready.
All right. So let me just get the recordings all set. Okay. Start recording when you're good.
I am good. Oh, wait, hold on. No, I'm not good.
Oh no.
I'm a bad boy. No, okay, I'm good now.
Okay. Recording.
Peace.
What?
Okay.
Something wrong?
Nothing is wrong. All is right with the world.
All is right with the world? Hold on. My levels got weird. One sec. Bleep blurp, bleep bloop. Blurp blurp. Plop plop. Bleep plop. Blippity bloop. Blap blap. Ooh, no, that's too much bleed. Bleep blop. No, too much. No, turn you down. Check. Nope, too much. Check. Oh, that seems, no, it's a little too high actually. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, you good?
Mm-hmm. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I am ready. Hold on. I keep fiddling with these trying to get a better level, but it's never better. It's worse. And I never know how loud I'm going to be. I feel like I have a very large dynamic range.
Yeah,
Large dynamic range.
You went from very quiet to very loud, and now you're medium porridge.
Okay, how's this? No, it's probably
This
too
is
loud.
it's a little on the loud side.
How's this? This.
That's fine.
This.
Just pick one.
This. Nope, too loud. This. There. Okay, I'm peaking at 6. That's right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yes, I'm peaking at -6. All is well.
Okay.
You probably don't have to worry about that because you don't yell as much as I do. I think you've only peaked out on a couple of episodes.
Well, we'll try not to say anything that gets me too riled up.
Yeah, it was, just stuff about how much you hated democracy.
That would do it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll stay away from that for a variety of reasons.
Yep. Okay, so let's begin the podcast. So, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, pod start. I'm just trying to do a marker track here. What? What's wrong?
What's our intro?
Oh. This time, it was we who did not see you come in.
Sure.
All right, I'll do it. Ah, this time it was we who did not see you come in. This is EE Phone Poem, a poetry analysis podcast, a podcast where we analyze a poem about podcasts and poetry.
Today we're not going to be analyzing a poem.
Yep,
Fooled you.
We have failed at the one thing we have set out to do.
We also haven't actually phoned a poem ever.
Well, we're not EE, so we don't have to.
That's true. Are we ever going to do an EE poem?
Yeah.
I guess we have to, although it'd be kind of funny if we didn't.
He's important and interesting enough that I would rather cover him at some point.
Yeah. Funny story, I always thought I hated him, but Alex convinced me I was probably wrong and I didn't hate him.
Yeah, he's cute with the punctuation, but there's a lot more to him than that.
Anyway, what are we doing today?
Today, we are introducing a crazy format shift in our crazy podcast.
Whoa, that's exciting.
We used to be a podcast where we analyzed poetry. Now we're a podcast that talks about video game news. So, did you hear about the latest shooting game?
Yeah.
I hear there's a new Doom.
Which console is the best console for poetry lovers?
It's clearly the PlayStation 4. But,
yeah, obviously. What self-respecting poetry lover would ever buy an Xbox?
Yeah, it's a big green X. It's very unpoetic.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Where's the concept of play?
Right.
Obviously.
Wordplay. You might as well call it a word PlayStation. The wordplay. That would have been another decent name for our podcast that probably would have gotten more listeners because they might have thought it was a video game show.
Word PlayStation.
That's actually pretty good.
Actually, because like radio station.
Oh man.
Yeah, no,
well,
That's pretty good.
That's way less labored than the thing we came up with, too.
I like it a lot less, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what's great about EE phone poem, other than me not being able to say it, is like it makes sense, but it's so labored.
Yeah. It almost gives me an image, too, though, which I like. I don't really know what the image is. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't entirely. It fails to actually resolve in a single image, and I'm left with, I don't know, some sort of amalgam of E.T. and what I imagine E. Cummings looked like, and trying to use a telephone to make a poem somehow. Maybe like how the the letters used to be on the dial. I guess they still are, even on cell phones, aren't they?
So there's no dial.
Whatever. You know what I mean.
Wait, I'm getting audio bleed again. Wait, no, I guess that was just a fluke. Never mind.
Well, wouldn't that be a really cool way? And by really cool, I mean really dumb and impractical way to play with poetic ambiguity. Like, right? You know how like on each of the numbers there are multiple letters?
I understand the feature of the phone. I don't understand what you're proposing, though.
Writing a poem that if you punched it into a phone like that, there would be at least two possible interpretations by selecting different letters.
That seems like a lot of work.
It would be a lot of work and not worth it at all.
Like, I mean...
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. For our next episode, we will be composing the phone poem. Oh, right, but I said we were changing the format without saying how we were changing it. So I probably terrified you all. That
we're going to compose a phone poem. Done.
Your beloved poemcast might disappear. Fear not, we're not going away. But we're also changing our format slightly. So the episode that you've been listening to up until now, all 4 of them, those are going to happen every other week. And then on the off weeks, we're going to do bite-sized recapulets to go with our Romeo episode mains.
There. Romeo episode mains? Was that the best you could do there?
I mean, do we have okay, do we want to retake that?
No, it's fine. We'll go with that. In fact, I feel like I'm gonna make you stick with that now.
A recapulets and Romeo episode mains. All right. People have told me not to edit out laughter, so I'm going to work on that. Except for obviously editing out that one hideous laugh we both do sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So just try to do other laughs.
I mean, wouldn't Maintagues have been a lot simpler? Never mind. It's fine.
It's fine. Moving on. Right. So we're gonna do recap episodes. Okay.
But they're not just gonna be recaps.
I am getting echo. Maybe turn your headphones down a titch.
Okay. All right. Say something.
Something. Echo. Jecko. Flecko.
Do you hear echo?
Echo. It's funny that that's not the word that Amazon Echo device activates on, isn't it? You'd think it would be that word rather than the other thing that it is. Okay, anyway. So recapulets, which aren't just regular recaps, but basically maybe there are people out there who don't want to hear some guys. Okay, I'm getting echo again.
I mean, if I turn you down much lower, I'm going to struggle to understand you.
All right. I can. This is something I can deal with in editing. It's just not ideal. But it's fine. We're fine.
My over-the-ear headphones broke. I'll get a new pair at some point.
I got a decent pair for $20.
Yeah.
They hurt, but they sound nice.
Yeah, everything that sounds nice hurts.
That's the appeal of punk music.
Yup.
Anyway, so our recapulomios and our ramagos are... so we have the main episodes, which are like the ones you've heard before. And then we're gonna...
Those are the Romulans.
The Romulans. And then the Klingons, those are going to be shorter and to the point and very interested in honor.
Right. Yeah, just on the off chance that there are some weirdos out there in the wide Federation who don't feel like the most appealing thing is to listen to a couple of guys talk about a single poem for 2 hours.
Right, that they haven't even figured out.
Right. So yeah, in those recapitulations, we are going to go over what we achieved in our analysis, but for our true fans, for the hardcore, there will be extra content, so you don't need to worry. If you've listened to the main analysis, we are also going to talk about our feelings.
Yeah. Stupid echo. So much like Spock was divided between his human and Vulcan side, our podcast will be divided between its human and Vulcan side.
Right.
With the Vulcan episodes being the ones you've heard so far, where we're just like, think about the poem. What does it mean? Think, Logic Man.
Right, and that'll appeal to the Romulans, that is the main audience, because of course the shared heritage between the Vulcans and the Romulans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, I don't want to get too sidetracked on Star Trek history, but that doesn't really make sense. Really should probably watch that new Star Trek show.
Yeah, I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, think about when Picard was on Romulus and all of those Vulcan sympathizers who wanted to reunite. Like, there are Romulans who are receptive to Vulcan ideas.
No, that's true. That's true. They're a nuanced and complex culture.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was my point? Oh, right. So we have the Vulcan episodes where we logic out the episodes, and you really get to see how you analyze a poem, like how to rip out its heart and dissect it like some kind of crazed Victorian doctor. Like, what's this thing? I wonder if a person can live without this. Let's dissect them in front of a big room of old white men. That's that episode.
Exactly.
And then the other episode, the short one for people who don't want to listen to 2 hours of that, is us.
It's just us being there. We won't say anything. You'll just be able to feel our presence. That's the real poetry. Life is poetry, man.
So on alternate weeks, we'll be releasing a 2-hour-long blank audio file. But you'll know that I put that together for you.
No, but really, yeah. We'll have the recap, conclusion to the analysis, and then just general feelings. I mean, not super general. Like, we won't be talking about how we feel about the current political climate or anything like that.
Because you're listening to a poetry podcast to distract you from that nightmare.
Yeah.
Like a nightmare that never ends. And it's on all the TV channels and all the websites. And you try to escape, but then they take away your health care and kick your friends out of the country.
But there's always poetry analysis.
Right. You can't deport poetry analysis.
You can deport the poem, but you can't deport the analysis of it.
Oh, dearie me. All right, so let's just record
I don't even know what that was. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, this is fine. So right now we're going to say, I'm going to have you explain the change in the podcast format and then I'm going to drop that at the beginning of the episode so we don't keep them waiting forever.
Okay. So you mean you're not going to keep all of that stuff about the Romulans?
I'm going to keep that. I'm just going to put it afterwards.
All right.
And then preferably at the end, segue into, and now we're going to try to explain it in greater detail.
Okay, so this episode inaugurates a change in the format of this podcast. On alternating weeks, we're going to stick with the format that you know and love so well, whereby we exhaustively beat a poem to death over the course of a couple of hours. But on the following week, we're going to magically bring that poem back to life in a brief segment in which we will recap our conclusions and talk about how the poem as a whole, after analysis, makes us feel. So that'll be hopefully worth listening to, even if you've listened to the longer episodes. But if for some reason you or your friends or your enemies don't like 2-hour-long poetry analysis podcasts, the briefer one will be able to stand on its own.
Yeah. For the people who just want to know what the poem means, which is not the point of poetry. If you are just asking for us to give you the answer, that's not how it works. It's about the process of analysis. But it's having someone explain a poem to you with a decent interpretation is still more valuable than just like nothing.
Yeah. And hopefully by talking about our general feelings about the poem, we'll be able to imbue some more meaning into the final analysis that we give there and make people want to seek their own meaning and go through their own analysis and start their own poetry podcast. They better not start their own poetry podcast.
No, don't let them. One is enough.
Okay, but today we're not going to do that either. Today we're going to have a special episode.
A spepisode.
Stethoscope, right?
For your bad pharynx. Remember that?
Yeah, you will. We're going to go back and briefly revisit the 4 poems that we've gone through so far.
Yeah, just because we found that in the weeks since we recorded those episodes, especially since we recorded those episodes all in a big chunklet, big gooey chunk of episode.
You should stop now.
Swollen in its goo.
Ugh.
Don't worry, I'll cut that out. A big crispy chunk of episodicals. I'm sorry. I had to turn my air conditioner off, and I'm a little sweaty. What was I saying? We're gonna go back and talk about the poems we already did.
Right.
Because we found that we recorded those all as a chunk when we were still getting the hang of just how a podcastle even works. Now we're experts, and it doesn't take me a whole week to edit the episodes anymore.
Yeah.
We found that our opinions on some of these poems have shifted slightly. And also, if we start getting to the point where people are writing in and saying their opinions about the poem, we're going to put that in the recap episode. So do that. You know, if you want. I'm not
Definitely do
banking
that.
on it personally, so if we don't get any mail, or the mail's not good, we're just not going to put it in the episode. It'll probably be fine, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to have to be real stupid for us not to put it in the episode.
So write in.
Yeah, write in. We have an ask form on our website, or just send an email to alex@eephonpoem.com. See, I have a domain name. I'm a real podcast. I don't need a job, Dad.
Jobcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just cut this all out. So, starting with our very first poem.
Yeah, especially because your dad is like our only listener.
Yeah, he sent me a text last week that he wanted to give us some feedback on the podcast, and I didn't write back.
Oh, he should give us feedback on the podcast. Like he actually listens to it. I don't care what your issues with your father are.
No, I meant to. It was just a stressful week, and talking to him is so draining.
No, yeah, that's true.
And I would leave this in, but since he listens, I'm gonna have to cut it. So I guess I'll just put a marker in that I have to cut my dad talk. I'm trying this thing where I put markers in for things to edit.
Yeah, that's wise.
Dad talk.
Dad talk is bad talk.
All right. I love you, Dad. Moving on.
Just in case you forget.
Yeah, just covering the bases. No, you've been a great father, and I really do appreciate all you've done for me. Despite our strained relationship, I really do hope that we can be closer in the future.
Beautiful. Okay. Moving on and backwards into the past.
Into the nuclear winter of a sore-throated insurance-y guy.
Yeah. You should write your own poetry, man.
I do. I was working on a poem about Dumbledore.
Oh, I'm glad you're actually writing that poem. That's exciting.
Yeah. It's not going great, but it's fun. It's a big... Trying to make a poem out of Harry Potter is fucking hard.
Yeah. No, it seems like an interesting challenge, given that 95% of those books are like the least poetic thing ever.
Right. Starts without Dumbledore.
Yeah. Dumbledore stands in a gray void. There is nothing but the Dumbledore.
I mean, joke, man. I would read a 300-page book that was just about like Dumbledore. That covered all the stuff about him that was in the books.
Yeah.
That would actually be pretty good.
I mean, I can see, right, but the problem is that you would have to remake the world. Like, you have to have Dumbledore doing things. Right? And as soon as he's doing things in Harry Potter world, it's not poetic anymore.
I mean, I feel like if you did a kind of a cross section of his life, you could probably cover it.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, because, we'll analyze your Dumbledore
in the last couple of books where you saw him as a younger man, like meeting Tom Riddle and stuff. Those were good.
No, yeah, that's true.
His characterization was quite nuanced and interesting.
Yes, he's a good character, much better than
a story about like his relationship with Snape. That right there.
No, yes, very nuanced, very good.
Did not need 7,000-page books to tell it.
Yeah, and there was all of this crap with these teenagers too. I don't remember much about that stuff, but it was pretty boring.
I mean, it was boring in a kind of great way because you just got to hang out in the magic school. But the parts that weren't hanging out in the magic school, like Book 5, 1980 Hogwarts.
Also, the last like third of all of the books in which some crap happened that stops them from going to class and hanging out in the magic school, and there was plot. I didn't like those parts.
The first 3 were okay on that.
They were better.
And then the fourth one had that stupid wizard tournament. Fifth one was trash. Sixth one, probably the best. No, definitely the best book. What am I saying?
Oh yeah, no, the sixth one, of course. That's where all the good stuff is.
Right. And most of the plot stuff in that one's actually quite interesting.
And then the seventh has some loose ends from the good plot stuff with like Dumbledore and Snape that it ties up as good, and then the rest of it is camping.
Yeah.
That's really, really dumb.
It really makes you appreciate how well Lord of the Rings did camping.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Like, wow, I do not care at all about these stupid kids camping.
Yeah, but somehow Lord of the Rings makes camping way more fun than it should be.
Yeah, and I mean, both of them are camping because of a Dark Lord. Like, it's a very direct comparison.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
come to think of it, maybe the reason why I don't go camping very much anymore is early exposure to Lord of the Rings. Camping without a Dark Lord just isn't the same.
You say that jokingly, but I kind of feel that. Like, camping without a reason seems dumb to me.
No, it's true.
Like, if I had a reason to camp, I would enjoy it. But
right.
I'm just going to go out into the woods and be uncomfortable. No. But
yeah, no,
as an experience to accomplish or to do something, it's like how I don't like going for a walk. I want to go to a walk to get to a place and do a thing.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, right. I mean it's a general problem with generating adversity. Like adversity leads to the most interesting circumstances in life, but it's really hard to convince yourself to generate adversity for yourself.
Right. Like I could see like I mean like a more extreme kind of camping trip. I think I can see the value in that, but also that's hard, and I'm very out of shape.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm going to walk these 500 miles to the mountain, and then I'm going to climb the mountain. I'm going to carry everything on my back. Yeah, okay. I get it.
Well, this was my childhood, so...
right, because your father was a mountain, and you kept trying to find him, but he kept moving.
And then when I did find him, he rejected me because I wasn't in the mountain that he was.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad, I love you.
At least my dad listens to the podcast.
Yeah, mountains don't listen to podcasts.
They don't make headphones big enough.
But actually,
if they did, they would cause an avalanche.
Yeah, but actually this points to the validity of our saying that camping without a Dark Lord doesn't work very well.
Dark.
No, okay, that's a slightly dark spin on it. But I think the reality does remain the fact that when I was a kid, my father would bring me out on these crazy week-long, like, we're going into the middle of the wilderness. Will we survive? Let's find out trips. And like, I didn't have to generate the adversity. I was just dragged out there, and then I had to try to survive.
Yeah. I probably could have done with a bit more of that. All my adversity was nuanced and modern.
Yeah, it's actually something that I have retrospectively come to appreciate, which I loathe because, of course, that's what he told me every time. Someday you'll appreciate this. I really would have liked it for him to be wrong.
Yeah, well, okay, poems.
Right, poems. What the hell was that?
I think that was a very fun camping tangent.
Yeah, all right.
Like, I'm going to keep that in there. That was a perfectly interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, okay, so Wallace Stevens.
Wallace Stevens. All right. So for our first poem, we picked a Wallace Stevens poem because we were the most sure that we could analyze a Wallace Stevens poem. Because one time we analyzed one of the 13 ways of looking at a blackbird for like 6 hours, and it was so fun and cool.
Yeah, like literally just one of the ways.
Yep. And then we wrote a play about it, and the play is about Japanese vampires.
Yeah. That play needs work.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, this isn't about our Dracula play.
I'm sorry, Japanese-American vampires.
Well.
Well,
yeah. Moving on. Right, okay. So I think this was probably a good choice for our first poem, on the one hand. On the other hand, it maybe was too good of a choice, if you catch my drift.
You could mean several things, my mate.
Indeed, I could, my Dave. But in this case, I mean that, we were very enthusiastic about it, and that was fun. But also, I feel like there's room for us now to reflect a little bit more out of the heat of the moment on what the poem means and how we feel about it.
Yeah, analyzing a Stevens poem, especially when it's not one of his best, is a little bit like having a passionate one-night stand and then they don't stay around to cuddle.
Yeah. I mean, for people who like poetry analysis, which, if you haven't gathered, we do. Stevens is just like a 5-course meal of all cake. He's delicious. It's impossible not to get incredibly excited and jacked up on a analysis high.
Yeah, he's a real emperor of ice cream.
Yes, he is.
He has a poem called The Emperor of Ice Cream, which is actually a very chilling metaphor for death, which is very effective.
Chilling. Huh.
Oh, that wasn't even intent. It's spooky. The way that poem, takes a ridiculous image, the Emperor of Ice Cream, and makes it terrifying is really cool.
Yeah.
The lamp affix its beam. The only emperor is the Emperor of Ice Cream.
Yeah, we'll probably do that poem at some point.
Yeah, it's a real good poem. It's probably one of his most famous.
Not
his best, but one of his most famous.
Yeah, but it's accessible.
Yeah, it's doing a thing that people can.
But also not. Like, it's actually really weird, which is why I would like to do it. It's, it's accessible in that it is clearly about death, and getting to say that this is clearly about a thing is really rare and nice with Stevens.
Right. Like, this poem is about a man with a bad pharynx, except the pharynx being bad is actually good because of super wind.
Right.
While Emperor of Ice Cream is definitely death.
Yeah.
And he is definitely saying that death is the only emperor. What that means is up to a lot of debate.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, we should probably do that one sooner rather than later. It'd be a lot of fun.
No, I definitely would. I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah, and Stevens is I feel like we'd be doing a very important public service by publicly analyzing Wallace Stevens.
Agreed.
Because, yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, man whose pharynx was bad. So, should we just quickly then review what we remember of our conclusions about this poem?
Yep.
I guess we should read it again, too. All right.
Should we? Yeah, no, we should. We should.
We really should.
Yeah, it'll give the audience a chance to reflect. It's just that this is so much harder than just saying my own words.
Reading it?
Yeah.
I'll read it.
You always read it, because I can't say words right.
You have no problem with saying your own words.
No. I mean, I finally even figured out how to do your theme song rap when I remixed it.
Yeah, no, that sounded good.
I have questions about what that rap means.
As well you should.
Well, actually, let's just take a quick tangent here. So about our theme song.
Yeah.
You wrote the lyrics to that.
Yes, I did.
What do they mean?
Okay. Well,
I get a lot of the references to various poets. They're quite clever. I don't know what the speaker is talking about.
No, this is yeah. No, this wasn't a meaning things kind of rap. Was more of a see how many proper names of poets I could pun into ongoing semi-grammatical sentences.
Right, but whenever I've done that, I wrote a Robert Frost rap, for example, for our Lost episode about the road less taken. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. And I'm sure you'll hear that when we do a Frost poem. But like, there's still some kind of narrative in your head, just like, why is this person saying these things?
Yeah, no, I had an idea at the time. I'm not entirely sure I remember what it was. I also don't remember the lyrics very well.
I can help you with that.
What were the lyrics?
Something. Check if. Okay, I changed the first line from something to check if that's a reference to Edmund Alec Spencer. It was something, or it might have just been check it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you.
I punned on what your original was.
I mean, I thought the pun was implicit, but you brought it out a little bit more.
In the original version, I downplayed it this time, but.
Okay. Right. Okay. So, right, Edmund Alec Spencer. I took to be a vainglorious rapping moniker of Edmund Spencer. I think that's fairly apparent.
Okay, moving on. Then it was something. You know what? I do have these lyrics.
I think it was.
It was the Bob South Auden Mouth.
Right, roll way out. Speakers make you Bob South Auden Mouth.
Right.
Right. So there's a pun on Raleigh, and always out speakers, which I take to be a description of poetry's presence on the page.
Right. Say that again. You cut out.
Raw way out, or is a pun on always out speakers.
What does always out speakers mean?
Speakers that are right. Okay, so it's a pun on the meaning of speakers. So a speaker is like the mechanical thing, and it's also someone speaking. And poets are speakers in the latter sense, but they're also silent because they are on the page, thus always out speakers, raw way out speakers. Make you Bob South. That's pretty apparent, right?
Right. And that's a Robert Southey. Right?
Yeah.
And also moving, like bobbing to the south.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
And what is Auden Mouth?
I believe that is just a pun on Cottonmouth.
Okay, that makes sense. So to translate that into English, it's
to translate that into English, it's the unspoken speech of the poem on the page inspires you to move to the mental land of the deep south that Keats speaks of.
I see. So you're addressing Edmund Alec Spencer here, who is the hypothetical listener.
Or rather, the reference to Edmund Alec Spencer is pointing us towards this feature of poetry as such.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Rose Pretty Pilgrim's Prague Rocket with Jeff Chow is obviously Geoffrey Chaucer.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking with this line.
It's my favorite line.
Yeah, I think I just went with it, even though
it's a good line. Okay,
even though it doesn't really make sense.
Right, and I don't see how that connects to the previous thing.
No, it seems to be starting a new thought.
Right, and mother analysis.
Did you catch the? I mean, Rose Pretty is supposed to be punning slightly on Rossetti.
I didn't get that.
Well, it was in my head.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why they're prog rocking it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fun, but
yeah, I had a thought at the time, but it's flown.
Oh, Pilgrim's Progress.
Yes, there's a Pilgrim's Progress pun in there too, for some reason.
That's weird. This was written well before we covered that poem by Bishop. That will be released either before or after this one, depending on what I feel like editing.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
Well, it's a seminal work of English weird ass literature.
Right. Not poem though.
But
anyway,
it might as well be a poem.
Yeah. Right, and then
like a novel.
Right, and then Jeff Chouse obviously is Chaucer, the Chouse man, and then I think the rest of it's pretty understandable.
I don't understand the next line at all.
Isn't it Mother Ode analysis, not poetaralysis?
Yes, that is the next line. What does that mean?
Right. Okay. So Mother Ode,
right,
is a pun relating ode to mother lode.
Right. No, I understand what the pieces mean.
Right. So analyzing. Well, okay. I mean, you could either say that just means analysis of odes, or the best odes, the mother lode of odes, or you could read that in Freudian terms if you wanted. Not that we do Freudian analysis, but hey, it's there. Not poetaralysis. Now, poetaralysis, I take it, is the paralysis that one can get in front of a complex poem one doesn't know how to analyze.
Right, and but does this connect with any of the other lines?
It's the other. Okay, so the other lines were sort of an invocation of the gravity of the muse of poetry, the enormity of her great task, and this line moves from that towards the mission statement of the podcast itself in the face of that grandeur of poetry.
Okay, so it's so it starts with the speaker citing a reference to Edmund Ulrich Spencer about about this thing about outspeakers and bobbing south and not in mouths.
Right, and then saying, like, okay, like that may sound difficult to parse, but come on, guys.
I see. So you're impelling.
No poetaralysis allowed.
I see. So we're impelling the audience to pick up the phone and phone et. And call ET and ask them about poetry.
And then I think, and then what was the last line? The last line was definitely more explicable.
SPA to Byron.
Right, yeah. Now, I don't really know why I thought I could get away with that, but I wrote it anyway.
Yes, it's very hard to deliver.
I'm actually quite fond of how the Byron works there.
Why?
Right. Well, because okay, so so we're gonna do this now. And what we're going to metaphorically do here is get the Shelley phone bill paid. I.e., give the poem its due. Our SPA'd, right? Slipping in a little bit of Shakespeare reference.
Shakespeare reference?
SP.
Is that a thing?
Shakespeare.
Right, those are just two random letters from his name.
Yeah. I told you that this exercise was just about slipping in as many obscure references that were unwarranted and no one would be able to follow as I could.
Okay, fine.
SPA'd up Byron, right? So Byron, of course, being the richest of the Romantics, and you think it's going to be by Byron, but then I just shorten it to Byron, as if the first part of his name already contained the by. It's hilarious. And of course, there being a pun on buy and buy, since we're having him with all of the money.
Say that again. You banged the same time you said it.
And of course, there's a pun on buy and buy there.
Cool. All right. Well, this was the most self-indulgent thing we have done so far.
Yeah, I mean,
by a wide margin.
I really don't know why we're doing this.
I'm going to stick this at the end of the episode.
Stick this at the end of the episode. For the record, I think it's a terrible rap. I don't think this is how one should write a rap. But I don't apologize.
Hold on, my audacity. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Sort of marker. Anyway, so my point was theme song analysis. Whatever. I think it's
yeah, stick it at the end. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll stick it at the end. Well, let me just record this. And now for those of you who really like hearing us be self-indulgent and congratulatory of our own weird things that we do that no one wants us to do and no one asked us to do and no one would be interested in listening to. Kira and I do a little walkthrough of the meaning of our theme song, which will follow after the unnecessarily complex piece of electronic music that I've composed and stuck in here instead of editing the episode. See, now I have to do that. It's great.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no choice. It's not your fault.
Let me just do a little backup here, which will follow right after this.
Okay.
Okay, so back onto the Walter elements.
All right. So the man whose pharynx was bad. The time of year has grown indifferent. Mildew of summer and the deepening snow are both alike in the routine I know. I am too dumbly in my being pent. The wind attendant on the solstices blows on the shutters of the metropoles, stirring no poet in his sleep, and tolls the grand ideas of the villages, the malady of the quotidian. Perhaps if winter once could penetrate through all its purples to the final slate, persisting bleakly in an icy haze, one might in turn become less diffident. Out of such mildew, plucking neater mold, and spouting new orations of the cold. One might, but time will not relent.
Phew! Yeah.
Congratulations.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that was the first poem that we analyzed. What were our conclusions?
Double Secret Super Winter.
Yes. This is going to work a lot better when we have just freshly done the poem instead of
was,
having done it.
This was probably about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Long story short, it was about how all of the times of year feel the same. The speaker is no longer able to experience anything meaningful. Basically, everything is winter.
Right. The equivalence of all of the seasons is metaphorically winter. Right. That was the double secret super winter. Was there's on the one hand there's regular winter, and then on the other hand there's what happens when all of the seasons become the same, and that's metaphorically described also as winter.
It's tricky.
Wait, and no, wait, and then doubles, and I think that's just secret winter, and then I guess double super secret winter would be then this vision of that the poet wishes for, of if winter could be. Oh, I didn't see this before, but it seems as if he's asking for winter. Double secret super winter might also just be regular winter, right? Because because he's asking for if winter once could penetrate through all its purples to the final slate. So we talked about this before as this ultimate winteriest of winters. It's just so cold and so horrible that it makes you feel something again. And breaks you out of this state in which all of the seasons are the same, in which everything is the same, which we also call winter. But that could also just be a description of a return to regular winter, right? On another level, of the season has its distinctiveness back again. Winter is horrible, you know. When you really experience winter being horrible, you know. You've experienced the particularity of winter again.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah. Like, yeah, just the idea of experiencing actual winter is the same as this super winter. There's not really like the super winter isn't something that's not already there. It's there inside the regular winter.
Yeah. So we probably put that in really unnecessarily confusing terms.
Yeah, man, I think we did. Whew.
Right. I mean, essentially, the bluntest level of this poem is just saying, I can't feel the difference between the seasons. It's winter. I wish it just felt like fucking winter for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the basic level of the poem.
Right, but then there was also that thing about the bad pharynx being like the inability to feel the thing was still something that the sadness at the inability to feel was still something to feel, was still something that could lead him into this state of poetic expression.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So this all tied into the bad pharynx from the title, which just means sore throat, and which prevents the poet from speaking. Obviously, then this has a metaphorical implication of stymied creativity, what have you. But in our analysis, we then said that the poem is pointing towards a reading of having a bad throat, a sore throat, as how did we get there? Somehow the double secret super winter, which is also just regular winter, in being so terrible. Right. Okay. On a dumb level, winter causes sore throats. So the experience of winter as actual winter shows itself in the experience of getting a sore throat. Sore throat is a sign that you're living winter. And so then on the more metaphysical, creative level, that means that if the poet can really get in touch with his silence before the sublime terror of winter and its actual being, then that would itself be a kind of inspiration. His inability to speak in that context would itself give him something to speak about. Is that right?
Something like that. And then a lot of the key again is in the last line. One might, but time will not relent. Which I believe is just kind of referring back to his experience, like his reflection that, well, no, time is still moving. This, and the motion of time is contrary to this experience of everything being the same. And
I thought the experience of everything being the same was the problem.
Right, but then there is also time not relenting. Like time is still there.
Okay, so right, the season, you can't dwell in winter because all of a sudden it's spring again.
And also there's this kind of time is still moving towards your inevitable death and the death of the universe. And that itself is the truth of winter that you're trying to experience, but you can't. And you can't help but experience it because that is what existing is.
Right, that would be the bleakest, most nihilistic reading here.
Well, I mean, that part's bleak, but then the positive part as well. And hey, you can still do a poem about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which it seems very in lines with Stevens, Everything is awful forever, but I can at least do a poem about it, so I guess that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically a recap of our analysis. I don't think we need to go into that anymore. Our feelings on the poem. I mean, I feel like it is expressing the thing it is trying to express well.
Yes, I think it is a good poem. And I think it is an effective poem.
I don't know how much I like the thing it's expressing.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how much I do either.
Like, I mean, there's the old question of like, I think, yeah, it's so this succeeds. This is from Goethe's How You Analyze Art. What was it trying to do? Did it succeed at that thing? Is that thing worth doing? So I think we can say this succeeded at doing this thing that we just went over. Is this thing worth doing? In a vacuum, yeah, sure. Is it more worth doing than another kind of poem? I mean, this is the kind of poem you write when you feel depressed, like straight up clinically depressed. Like
no, it's definitely a poem
joy
about,
and meaning.
Yeah.
And this is the poem that a person in that state can write.
Yeah, and so on that level, I feel like yes, I stand behind this poem. I think it gives expression to that feeling, to a kind of lifeline, down into that darkness. This might not be the most inspiring vision for life, for poetry, but it's one that speaks to that state and speaks to what could convince you in that state. And so I think it's a worthwhile poem. Now, that said, I don't think it's the most worthwhile poem because because ultimately I hope that there are alternatives which are more inspiring than this. I get alternatives that are more inspiring than this, that feel real to me out of other Stevens poems even.
Yeah. Like a really, even something that's very pessimistic. Like, Eliot is going to be your go-to reference here, I think. Like, The Wasteland is not a happy poem.
No.
But the feelings and things it express are more vital and alive than this.
Well, okay. I mean, The Wasteland is a tremendous challenge. It's a tremendous poetic accomplishment that articulates a huge philosophical challenge. I think it's probably the greatest. I'll probably think of something else after I've said this grand statement, but you know what? Maybe I won't. I feel like it's probably the greatest poetic expression of modern nihilism that we have.
I think it probably. I don't think you're gonna find a better one.
Yeah, no, that may be a pretty safe statement. So, right. So I should clarify. I think it sounded a minute ago like I was saying that the problem with this poem isn't inspiring. I don't think that the goal of poetry is need be to be inspiring. I think the goal of poetry should be to confront us with truths, no matter how difficult they are. So I guess the difference between this and The Wasteland, and this is totally unfair comparison to Stevens, but is that this poem gives us a nice little pat on the back, and it's self-aware about how little that pat on the back means. Nonetheless, I feel like that action of going, well, if you just bury yourself deep enough in the wintriness and the silence of it, there's a kind of inspiration that you can find there. It's unsatisfying. Whereas Eliot really makes you stare into the void and go, my God, really, how do we go on?
The difference. It really is an unfair comparison, but the difference would be that, Stevens here is hypothesizing a double secret super winter, and Eliot is being like, look at this double secret super winter. He is showing it to you with these words. Like, you read that poem and you feel that depth of destruction and awfulness. And again, this poem is about not being able to feel that.
Yeah.
It's like, really a piece of art about not being able to make good art can only be so good. Still worthwhile, still good, but not great.
Yeah, and it's self-aware of that. It's saying that he's not spouting these new orations of the cold.
I want those orations of the cold, though.
Right, exactly. If you're saying on the one hand, the cold is all there is, the cold is the reality, and on the other hand, you can't even feel the cold. Right? If you're saying that the good thing is for your pharynx to be bad, but then the poem belies that by being a poem and being articulated, then it makes me feel like on a certain level, it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
And again, all in a very self-aware way that points you towards that paradox.
And it really is a very good portrayal of depression. Everything is the worst, but not in that good way.
Right.
That good way where you feel like the world is ending and everything is meaningful. Like numbness and listlessness. Saying which feeling is worse is a stupid proposition, obviously, but it's not obviously better to be in this state of indifference than it is to be in an actual double awful winter thing. It's
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, there's right, because but he's not actually indifferent because he wants to be able to pluck the new orations, to spout the new orations of the cold, right?
right. Well,
So he's just
depressed
kind
person
of
wants to not be depressed.
right. Well, yeah.
That's if you didn't not want to be depressed, then it wouldn't be
Yeah.
as bad. I mean, it would still be awful, but it wouldn't be as bad.
Yeah, I mean, would you call that depression? Like it doesn't.
I think I think you can get to that point with depression.
Well, I believe that you can think it's impossible to feel better, but it doesn't seem conceivable to me that you wouldn't want, per impossible, like to be better if you could.
I mean, it gets
That
very
sounds like death.
yeah, it gets very thorny, and I think it can happen. It's and that's its own whole other bad thing. But that's not the thing he's talking about here, so I don't think it's actually relevant. Because certainly the thing he is talking about is much more common. Like while the just
Well, I mean, I do think it's what he's talking about, though, because what he's pointing to is the way out would be something like that, something like a depression that you don't want to get out of, right?
no, kind of. It's yeah, I see your point, but whatever. Okay, I think let's wrap up this poem. We have to do more poems.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So on the whole, I think it's a very clever, really lovely poem that successfully does what it wants to do, and I feel like honestly, I've seen this thought expressed at least close to this well in other places. I think even within Stevens, and so while a good poem, it doesn't feel essential to me.
Now, I don't see myself returning to this one. Like, I mean, it doesn't even have like that piercing imagery that kind of gives it an identity, which of course is the point. But again,
Yeah.
like you don't just But the point is that it doesn't have great imagery. No, shut up.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the point, but also, take your silver medal and go home, Wally.
All right, let's say one nice thing about it though, each. What's your favorite thing in this poem?
Well, you start. You had time to think of that.
Okay, my favorite thing in this poem is the last line, and how you think that it is just this rote poetic device that he says one might, the repetition there, but then you realize that this also could be a literal reflection of someone with a sore throat struggling to get his words out. I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, I mean, the last line is the best thing about the poem, definitely. Just to be different, I'm also going to say the first line is very good.
It is a good line.
It's very streamlined, and it's not relying on crazy archaic words. It's using a word weirdly, but in a cool poetry-like way. And I think it's a very good way of letting you into what this poem is about.
Yeah, well, I like the way that it calls attention to the literal meaning of indifferent as not different. That's fun.
Yeah, I think it's It's a good opening line to a poem. And then just the other thing I like about it is I like that that all purples to the final slate line. Just the poem isn't winning any awards for imagery, but I think that's some good, down to earth, effective imagery.
No, that is. Oh, and in the revised version, the failure of the rhyme in that stanza is quite nice.
Yeah, I still think it's weird how he felt the need to keep the line "the malady of the quotidian."
A little bit.
Like that's dude. I mean, again, I think that's his point. Is like, I can see him being angry at himself for having written that line and just being like, well, nope, it's got to stay in because that's what this is. This is about being a guy who would write the phrase "the malady of the quotidian" in a poem.
Sure.
Which is, just a thing that no poem wants.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. So moving on to our simplest poem.
Oh Jesus.
All
right. I need a minute to make a cup of coffee before this one.
Yeah, me too. Good idea.
All right, meet you back here.
Yeah.
All right, Greggy.
Greggy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so why don't you start by explaining the poem?
Oh, Jesus. All right.
Let's not bother reading them. I can just edit in the versions from the old episodes.
Isn't that just more work for you?
Yeah, you're right. Just read it.
No man saw awe, nor to his house admitted he a man, though by his awful residence has human nature been. Not deeming of his dread abode, till laboring to flee, a grasp on comprehension laid, detained vitality. Returning as a different route, the spirit could not show, for breathing is the only work to be enacted now. And not consumed, old Moses wrote, yet saw him face to face. That very physiognomy, I am convinced, was this. All right, so this is where waiting to do this recap feelings thing is really going to screw us over, because if we'd done this anytime shortly after we'd done our analysis, I would have remembered what the hell. Well, no, I remember basically what this means. I would have remembered how we got it, though, which I'm struggling to at this point.
If you can remind me what it basically means, I edited the episode, so I have a better memory of what we said.
All right. Basically, all right, what happened was we spent an hour trying to figure out just what the hell this means on a grammatical level, because it's so grammatically weird, which normally, would have been pretty unforgivable.
But you loved it so much, you asked us to keep doing it.
But in this case, I think turned out to be totally justified, because the grammatical weirdness tied right into the theme of the poem in a really awesome way. And the grammatical weirdness all centered around the fact that she does not give us the subject. She uses all of these in the middle two stanzas of the poem, the heart of the poem. She does not give us a subject. She uses all of these gerundy constructions to avoid it. And then our analysis of the poem turned on the how the avoidance of the subject in a certain way mirrors the question of the ambiguity of knowing God in God's appearance, which crops up in the book of Exodus, with this weird contradiction between God making a big fuss to Moses about not showing him his face, just his back, a page after we have just been told that Moses regularly meets with God face to face. And then we speculated that maybe the disappearance of the eye might point to a way in which the human subject has a similar kind of ambiguity built into it, and thus points to some deep, strange connection between our own natures and the nature of God.
Yeah, that sounds, I think you covered it, man.
Yeah. I mean, I kept thinking about this poem on a philosophical level after we did this this analysis, because I think it's completely on point and totally ties into a bunch of philosophy stuff I'm thinking of anyway. So I can't help but love this poem because of doing that so well in such a unexpected, poetic way. God, we need to stop using the word poetic as an adjective. But in this case, what I mean by that is in a way that expresses an idea through the self-referential use of the structure of language. Now, what it is not as poetic in a looser definition of the term is, pretty words or good images or, all of these things, which for the record, I also like. And so I'm not opposed to faulting the poem for the fact that it doesn't really have those things.
When we talked about this a while back, I was much harder on it for that. But really, it's a very short poem. And there are at least a couple of lines in there that I quite like, just on a experiential level. I think Breathing is the only work to be enacted now is quite good. Especially in it really feels like this poem was written in such a way where she, and this is Dickinson all in general, she's just cutting it down, taking out every word she does not need.
Oh yeah. Which makes the words that remain really palpable and memorable.
Dickinson's poetry is a lot like, she took a hammer and chisel to a regular poem.
Yeah. So there's a certain way that Dickinson's poems feel in their awkwardness. They possess their own kind of peculiar beauty. You wouldn't think that something so minimal could express so much, and there's something rather awe-inspiring about that.
Yeah, it's where it's. I mean, there's still some stuff that rubs me a bit the wrong way, like the word physiognomy. That's just a hideous word. I know why she's using it.
It's really important for the interpretation.
Right exactly the right word to be using. That
I don't think she could get around that one.
No, I know she couldn't, but I'm mad at her for putting herself in a circumstance where she had to use that word.
I'm less inclined to fault that, but the other. I gotta say, I can't imagine that she couldn't have found a better way to put the second stanza, though. The obscurity there just seems to be totally unwarranted to me.
Yes, I feel like some of that might just be us being dummies.
No, it's a weird stanza. It's super weird, awkward.
But I feel like nah. It's.
I mean, look, again, I justify it all because the difficulty is thematically tied in to what the poem ends up doing. But I do think it could have been slightly less difficult, ideally, and still did the thing. I mean, Dickinson's always difficult. This is excessive. But
yeah, and I mean, there's even the evidence in the manuscript that she added that first stanza to make it even, just to give people a chance.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh man, no one is going to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess that there's really, I don't have a lot more to say about this poem other than I see its flaws and I don't care because I like what it was doing too much.
I like this poem more than the Stevens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a much deeper poem.
It's doing a much more complicated thing. Stephen's good job talking about, the nature of existing in time and not feeling things. Yeah, that's fine. But, deal with the idea of looking God in the face and what that means. That's a whole different level.
Yeah. Not to mention the really sophisticated implied reading of Exodus going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I could see someone else being very critical of the poem for more or less requiring an understanding of a weird thing about the Book of Exodus.
Right. I just think that's great.
I think that's great too. If this were about like the Book of Judges or something, I would probably feel differently because I don't know that at all.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I guess this is worth talking about though, because I totally can see why someone might say this is a fault. On the other hand, you know, and on the other hand, like I just feel like everyone, and I'm gonna maybe be sounding really elitist by saying this, but I feel like everyone should probably have a rough knowledge of the Book of Exodus. It's kind of important,
Yeah,
and I don't mind a poem requiring that.
You need to know Exodus and Genesis.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I think I agree. I think that Exodus and Genesis and Life of Jesus are required biblical reading.
Yeah, for just
like, okay, you don't
being
know
in a right. But if you live in, certainly if you live in the West, in any society indebted to the Judeo-Christian tradition, just to understand the place you live, this is pretty important. So
yeah, and like she gives you what you need to find that bit in the book.
Yeah.
She gives you face to face, and Moses wrote.
Right.
Anyone who's interested in figuring out this poem is immediately going to look to Exodus and is going to skim it for face stuff, and they're immediately going to see the thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. For the record, I had
obscure.
For the record, I had remembered the thing about God not letting Moses see his face, but I had not noticed before this poem brought my attention to it that this followed on this statement about Moses and God meeting face to face.
Actually, the way it went down is a little bit more amusing than that. You remembered that God wouldn't let Moses see his face, and I remembered that God met Moses face.
Right, and we were like, well, one of us is clearly wrong.
And it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I mean, we're not Bible experts.
No, by no means.
Like, we're really not.
Yeah.
I promise.
So yeah, no, I'm not going to call that a fault of the poem.
No, yeah, I think it's not like fucking Stevens using the word metropoles for no goddamn reason.
I mean, and also the time period. It's just in the 19th century, it just certainly wouldn't have occurred to Dickinson for a second that anyone wouldn't know the Book of Exodus.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, that they might not have noticed this weird ambiguous thing, I think is...
Right, but in that case, I'm sure she would be like, cool, I'm going to point out this ambiguity and make people's religious viewpoint a little bit more nuanced.
Also, the question of how much she was writing to be read is...
Well, okay. Yeah, all right. Let's put that question away in a drawer like she did all of her poems.
Right. Almost all of her poems.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, she's writing to be read. I mean,
well, every poet is writing to be read ultimately.
You can't write, I don't know. That's why I don't get writing in a journal. Like, why are you, unless you expect this to be published at some point, why are you writing it?
You certainly are not. There's certainly no need to write carefully if you don't imagine that someday someone might read it. At least not one that I can understand.
Writing is communication.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, I could see people being like, oh yeah, all you care about is fame. No, this is what writing is for. Like, this is a tool developed to share things with other people. We have ways of sharing things with ourselves. It's called remembering. Like, we don't need language to do that.
Yeah. You certainly don't need poetic language
for ourselves.
Yeah, certainly not language with this level of care put into it.
Yeah, you don't layer, like, it's way easier to remember that, oh yeah, the ambiguous subject is kind of like seeing God's face, than it is to say, I'm going to illustrate this in a poem.
Right. But I mean, this is what poems. I mean, this is why poems are fantastic, though. Is
because you can't exactly
because
say how.
yeah, is when we just boldly state the thesis like that, it's very easy for someone to hear that and go, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, no, it's not. That's not how it works. But when the poem makes you work that out step by step for yourself, and you see how these thoughts are embedded in the language, and you go through the process of digging it out, it gives you an experience of the validity of that thesis. Maybe not sufficient, for you to buy it as a new dogma, but certainly sufficient to take it seriously.
Yeah. No, it's a really cool poem. Yeah, I guess last time we talked about this, I was just feeling down on it for some reason, and I don't know why. I mean, but right
I think
now,
you edited the you edited the episode, and you had to hear us going through the painful details.
that's probably it. Yeah, trying to figure out whose dread abode and who was laboring to free, and what the hell the phrase "a grasp on comprehension laid detained vitality" means.
Uh-huh.
Because that's
Yeah.
not a sentence. Like, I mean, okay, it's a sentence, Emily. It's technically a sentence. Good job.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try to remember what we came to as a conclusion there.
No, it's. There's an implied. I can explain it. There's an implied subject whose grasp on comprehension, who lays a grasp on comprehension, which demands vitality. That's what it means. It laid is an
Right.
adjective there, not a verb.
Grasp on. Okay.
It's bullshit.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And so.
Like, the thing is that for the difficulty of that stanza, what it
Yeah.
actually means is like that
No,
one.
I
The balance of difficulty of understanding and what you get out of it is way out of whack.
no, because I see the way towards making sense of that with the overall theme of the poem, but it is a winding way. And yeah, no, if the poem has a weak point, it's definitely that second stanza.
But okay. So that's this poem. It's a really good poem. Very, very, very smart. Very, very solid. Oh, and I just want to give a final shout out to. I really love the beginning of that last stanza. Am not consumed, old Moses wrote, yet saw him face to face.
Yeah, no,
I love the image of this like kind of mad and desperate Moses like scrawling this down. Am not consumed.
right, and that makes most explicit the disappearance of the subject. And it links it up to this kind of, well, it links it up to the question we were just talking about. It links it up to the desire to be understood by others. The desire to be understood by others might entail a kind of occluding of the subject, and that line allows us to see that viscerally by giving us this image of a Moses so desperate to get this down on paper that he is shortening the construction of his sentences.
Yeah. And I just feel like the strength of that image makes up for kind of some of the shallower imagery in the other points in the poem. Like,
yeah.
It's such a powerful image brought out in such a like carefully put together way.
Mm-hmm.
It's so unique. It's not just like, oh, winter's pretty, Wally. Oh, the deep purples of winter. Great job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, being a little mean to good old Wally here, but this is just a much better poem.
Yeah. I mean, I have plenty of sympathy for Wallace Stevens, but I don't feel like that is the feeling you should have towards a great poet. Not that he's not a great poet. I mean,
I mean, no, the best Wallace Stevens, an idea of Order at Key West or something gives me the same kind of reverence that this Dickinson gives me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like the idea of Order at Key West is a masterpiece.
Yeah, but the man with the hurdy throat, not so much.
You're banging on something there.
I am?
I like your mic maybe, or your cord. I don't know.
I was just using my computer.
Yeah. It's okay. It's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah, Man with the Hurdy Throat. It's not Stevens's best work, and this isn't Dickinson's best work either, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem perverse to say that this poem is her best poem, but
it would be weird if
I
randomly picked her best poem.
Right. Especially given that it's one that I've never heard anyone talk about before.
Well, I mean, Bloom did put it in his book.
True.
And I feel like, you know what, I'm going to give Bloom credit there because he's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, Bloom has many, many shortcomings as a critic, but he's attuned to interesting biblical readings. So
yeah, I mean, Bloom is, and I think we do owe him some thanks for being like, hey, dudes, check this out.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Because this one's like very often left out of our collections and stuff too, because it's such a late one.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult.
Yeah. Well, props towards Harry.
Yep.
Okay. Shall we move on?
Yes, let's move on to The Visible, the Untrue by Crane.
Alrighty. This was our most labored over analysis. I feel like.
Yeah, it's quite a doodle.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll take the turn of summarizing this one. Ahem.
Well, okay, hold on. Should I read the poem first, quick?
Oh, yeah. Go for it, Johnny.
Okay. Yes, I, being the terrible puppet of my dreams, shall lavish this on you, the dense mine of the orchid split in two, and the fingernails that cinch such environs? And what about the staunch neighbor tabulations, with all their zest for doom? I'm wearing badges that cancel all your kindness. Forthright, I watched the silver zeppelin destroy the sky to stir your confidence, to rouse your sanctions. The silver strophe, the canto bright with myth, such distances leap landward without evil smile, and as for me, the window weight throbs in its blind partition to extinguish what I have of faith, yes, light, and it is always, always, always the eternal rainbow, and it is always the day of unkind farewell.
Can you read the first stanza again? There was some interference there.
Okay. Yes, I, being the terrible puppet of my dreams, shall lavish this on you, the dense mine of the orchid split in two, and the fingernails that cinch such environs? And what about the staunch neighbor tabulations, with all their zest for doom? All right, so do you want to try to summarize our analysis of that little poetaloo?
Well, the most important thing to take away from this poem is that a window weight looks a lot like a dick.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a poem that's a weird meditation on kind of the way that these mental constructs of the person you're in a romantic relationship with, and then your relationship with those constructs, and the relationship.
God blimps, we call them.
We call them God blimps. Yep. And your relationship between your Apollo Zeppelin boyfriend and you, and also the rest of the world at large. And at the end of the poem, he's coming, and then it's kind of like the relationship between the self and the image of the beloved that you create is not unlike that of a human and a god that they create. But also then there's the real person, and then the relationship that's happening through those proxies, sort of. And
it's a confused poem.
And windows. It's an overambitious poem, I think. That said, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what the eternal rainbow meant? Because I was very happy with how we got that down.
Yeah, I think that was, in the end, my favorite part of the poem. Right. The gist was, it's not a rainbow, it's a painbow. You think it's a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing. I don't quite remember why it was a bad thing.
Well, it's the rainbow is indicative of the uncrossable distance between the two, and also everyone else, I think.
All right. Okay. I think. Okay. I don't quite know how this ties into the rest of the analysis, but I remember we linked it up with the title.
Right.
And we had this thing about how. Right. Okay. So the visible, the untrue. So there's, a deceptiveness in appearances, and the rainbow would be an image of a guide to the various ways in which appearances are deceptive, because it contains all of the colors, i.e., all of the forms of deceptive appearance are put in the rainbow as if it were an index.
Right. The thing is that because you can see it, it's not real. It's, it's this very dualist notion of the soul as being not manifest in our physicality.
Yeah, again, weirdly pursuing similar lines as the Dickinson.
Yeah, and
but the rainbow then would be kind of would be an exception to this in a certain sense, because in giving you this true index to the deceptiveness of appearances, it would itself transcend that deceptiveness.
It's the lie that's like is an index of lies real, and I mean, is an index of lies true? And I think the intangibility of the rainbow there, the fact that the rainbow isn't something that you can actually experience, and it's just a fleeting thing in the sky, this thing that's bordering between visibility and invisibility, that provides a map.
Right. Ironically, the most stable map there is.
Right.
Or maybe not ironically, maybe just fittingly, because on a blunter level, the rainbow would also be the sign of the deceptiveness of appearances, because it is so obviously itself a deceptive appearance, and hence points you directly towards their nature.
Yeah.
But what the hell was the relation between that and the God blimps? Leaving aside the window weights and the staunch neighbor tabulations and the dense mind of the orchid and all of the other things this
No,
poem
no.
was doing.
No, it's so you wanted to know the relationship between the rainbow and the blimps?
Yeah.
Okay. The blimp is an example of the kind of false visible thing we create.
Mm-hmm.
Out of this other person, we make them into a god blimp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We inflate them with our love until they get so huge they float up into the sky.
Kinda. And it's this
Like in Harry Potter.
or in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when they have the fizzy lifting drink.
Right.
Um,
Oh, she did just steal that from that, didn't she?
I don't remember that in Harry Potter.
No, that happened in the first book with the Dursleys. I forget the circumstance. Because we touched on Harry Potter for some reason earlier.
Yeah, well, now I can't cut it. I wasn't going to cut it anyway, but this is an excuse.
Okay, so sure, all right, fine. The rainbow shows us the reality of the god blimp.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, you're being a little dismissive of the god blimp. It works in the context of the poem. I watched the Silver Zeppelin destroy the sky is a good line.
Right, okay, and if we're imagining some sort of like Hindenburg explosion.
Which hadn't happened yet. USS Akron.
Right, one could imagine then that in the, you know, the multicolored, you know, explosion streaking across the night sky, it was vaguely reminiscent of a rainbow.
Yeah. It's a weird poem.
Right. My feelings on this poem have definitely, I very kind of reluctantly, I think I came round to it at the end after being really skeptical of it because I thought this idea of the indexical rainbow was super cool. But unlike the Dickinson, where the final idea made me feel like it justified our labors to get there because it was so intrinsically related, I don't feel that way about this poem. I feel like the cool idea at the end is super cool, and I can vaguely relate it to the God Blimp stuff, but it's still vague, and I can't really relate it to the rest of the poem, except on the most general of terms. So I definitely, my feelings about the poem have cooled since I begrudgingly said it was a good poem at the end of the podcast.
I'm still quite fond of it. I certainly see the flaws that you're talking about. The connections between the stanzas are loose.
Yeah. And there's just some really dumb lines. Staunch neighbor tabulations, anyone?
Yeah, no one is forgiving staunch neighbor tabulations. It is definitely the worst line in a poem we have covered.
Yeah.
Which is impressive because, you know, we did a Stevens poem where he uses the word metropoles for no reason.
True.
Or the malady of the quotidian. Like, staunch neighbor tabulations makes the malady of the quotidian look so poetic.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's just it's just ugly.
Yeah.
And unnecessary. Yeah, and like you can have one or the other.
Like I think the poem really overreaches in how it's trying to bring like society in general or just general other people and how they play into this whole thing. Like, okay, man, you know, you can write a poem about the image of the beloved. That's all. That's good. That's a perfectly good thing for a poem. But then you're also just trying to work in how everybody else feels about your image of the beloved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's...
Yeah. And also the image of the beloved itself is so confused because, you know, we're concentrating on the God blimps, but first of all, the God and the blimp. First of all, the God and the blimp, we only were able to connect through the repetition of the word silver, which is just that's just silly.
Yes, no one is saying that, like.
And also, he has all of this great stuff. In fact, I actually feel like the best image for the relation of lover and beloved might be in the beginning, where he talks uh, about himself as the terrible puppet of his own dream of the beloved.
Yeah, no, I think that's like it's a Franken poem.
Yeah, I mean that is probably the best version of that, and it just dropped.
I mean, the thing is that, like, okay, I mean, we talked about how this poem is, well, okay, remember there was the meta level where the poem was doing this thing where it was taking these two very different versions of expressing the same thing, the orchid mine and the exploding blimp, and then trying to tie together how those two dissonant things can express the same concept in the that third stanza. And it's trying, but it's like,
Right, and then we can be super generous and say that the diversity of appearance here is a sign of its deceptiveness, and why you need something like the rainbow to be an index to it, and poetry itself is probably also the rainbow on another level. And no, I'm not. If we're not going to give Wallace Stevens if we're not going to let Wallace Stevens slide for giving us a really quite lovely, for the most part, poem about how hard it is to write a poem, I don't think we can quite let Hart Crane slide for giving us a kind of a super awkward poem about how hard it is to write a not awkward poem.
I'm much more sympathetic towards the poem than you are, because I feel like okay, I feel like the pieces are good. And then I can see what he's doing. He's trying to link them all together, and he's way overstretching, both his abilities and possibly the capabilities of language.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is like modernism. Like, this is the beating. Like, it's like, I can do anything. And I really like that energy. And I like I like the Zeppelin poem, and I like the Orchid poem. I like the Platonic crazy imagery of the window blind. When he's trying to tie it all together, I don't think it works, but I like the pieces.
No, I like the majority of the pieces. I like the puppet image. I don't like the window weight. I don't feel like that works.
No. I think you're just being unfair because we don't have window weights anymore. I think it would be a very good image if we didn't have to spend an hour and a half figuring out what a window weight was.
All right, fine. I might be prejudiced. No, I like the best of the pieces. All right. I just, I don't see, right. I mean, he says that the rainbow, I mean, the way we're reading it, the rainbow ought to give us the connection between all of these pieces, right? There ought to be, I can see what he wanted this poem to do, right? We think all of these things are disconnected, and then we get this rainbow image, and we're like, aha, of course, now I see how they're all connected. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that lovely? And I kind of do that, but I don't actually have the experience of it. I have an experience of going, this is what he wants me to think, not an experience of really seeing that thought in action in the way that I see Dickinson's thought in action in her poem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's expressing his ideas well, but I think he's expressing his feelings about the ideas well. Like, I think the eternal rainbow and the day of unkind farewell at the end really does capture, like, I know how this guy feels about these things. I know how he feels about his lover.
Yeah.
And I'm moved by that. I think I definitely think the poem is overreaching what it's capable of doing in terms of complex ideas, but I think the value to be found here is in emotional expression.
Well, I mean, we want to be careful not to draw. I mean, our whole business here is saying that there's, you know, you can't draw a clean line between these things.
Right.
You know, if you really care, you know, if you have strong feelings about a thing, you know, poetry is the business of finding the right language to express those strong feelings.
Right. And I think, you know, and I don't think he did not do an elegant job of guiding us to the thing that he had the feelings about. But we got there.
No, okay. I'm put it like this. I'm not saying I dislike this poem, first of all. I just don't love this poem. I just think that if this were a poem that wanted to be read as just kind of this leaping, intuitive, you know, more impressionistic piece, then there would have been a different way to formulate these things. It seems as, you know, it, or on the other hand, if it were the kind of poem that really needed to, you know, be analyzed in depth, then it ought to reward that analysis more. Instead, you have to do a lot of analysis for the sake of going, for the sake of just understanding that more impressionistic emotional level properly. And I don't think that's ideal.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the tragedy of Hart Crane is he's caught between these two different kinds of poetic expression.
I see where you're going, and I don't necessarily disagree. But I also don't feel like this poem navigates that duality in the most elegant way for him. Like, I think he does do it better in other places.
Yeah, no, he does. He does. Like, I mean, again, I hate to bring it up again, but we don't know if he was done writing this poem when he killed himself.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I totally buy that this poem might be unfinished, and in which case we're being way too harsh on him.
Yeah, I mean, and also, even if it was finished by a man who then went on to kill himself. He probably wasn't in the best poem making mind.
Right, yeah. No, that's totally fair.
I mean, sometimes that, you know, sometimes you do write a very good poem before you kill yourself, but not usually.
Yeah.
Usually there's a period of a couple of years or something like that where your poetry is suffering because of your suicidal feelings.
Yeah, one would imagine that's not helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think the poem is a success exactly. Like, yeah, it's not a success, but it's a failure I like.
That's fair. I think I would basically agree with that. I think I probably like it a little less than you do, but I still like it. So
yeah, I mean, it could just be that after the previous two poems, I was starved for some feelings. Like, God, you know, give me your throbbing dick window blind. Window. Give me your. I'll cut that out. Throbbing is too much.
Throbbing's in there, man.
Oh, right. That's what the poem says. Yeah, well.
Yeah, and it is too much.
Well, again, I find that kind of clumsy expression of like, I'm gay and I can't tell anybody.
It
so
is
I'm just, like.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I mean, we were really hard on that throughout the episode, but I like it.
We're not. I don't think we were hard on it. We were just
really hard on it.
No, we were just discontent with leaning on a biographical reading, which I think is fair. We don't want to lean on that.
Yeah, although I feel like this poem is better with a biographical reading.
Well, now okay. So here we are getting into another question of another sort of basic question of poetry interpretation, right? Where I'm totally okay with a poem presuming that we need to know something about Exodus. I'm less okay with a poem presuming we need to know something about the poet's life.
I think I think the poem is fine without knowing stuff about the poet's life. I mean, the poem is telling you he's pretty gay.
No, yeah, and that's how poems should work. That employ biographical information. That you should be able to get it out of the poem.
Let me tell you about this throbbing cylinder. Although, I mean, I guess he could be talking about a woman.
Yeah. Yes. I love how cylindrical women are.
No, I mean it's his cylinder, and he's like, there's only one. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, again, I actually I think that's fine. Like I think it
doesn't. That honestly doesn't really matter. Like the poem, like any kind of forbidden love would get you to the same place with this poem. Like, oh, they're from different social classes. Same diff.
No, exactly. Any kind of love
I wouldn't approve of is
right.
It gets you to the exact same place. So,
right.
Actually, it's kind of cool how gender neutral this is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very erotic, but also, yeah, looking at it, I feel like we may have been prejudiced there in our reading.
Yeah, no, I think that's why we were being hard on ourselves for getting too biographical there, because right, the problem with biographical readings is that you come into the poem armed with knowledge, and then you try to make the poem fit that knowledge rather than vice versa.
Yeah. And I mean, I do just kind of like gay love poems better than straight ones.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's more to agonize over, and that's always good for poetry.
And it's not falling back on all of these stupid, oppressive social patterns and patriarchies and crap. Like a dude can just get a boner from another dude, and it's just about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's sure. I hear where you're coming from.
Sometimes you don't want to write a poem about social structure.
Right. On the other hand, at any time, I mean, prior to the present, you couldn't avoid talking about social structure to some extent. Like this is what Hart Crane is doing here. But
I guess that's why so many people write about like lilies and crap.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, moving on.
What's the thing you like about the poem, Kier?
Well, as I said before, the rainbow is my favorite part. I think that is both very effective, and I just think it's rather delicious that he makes a rainbow deliver something that we haven't seen before poetically.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, say what you will about the poem, he totally earns always the eternal rainbow.
Yeah, which I was just not expecting.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the poem doesn't succeed at a lot of things. It makes eternal rainbow not stupid, so top marks for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next poem.
Wait, what do you like about it?
Oh, I like the whole poem, except for that stupid.
What's your favorite?
Except for that stupid third stanza. I think "Dense Mind of the Orchid" is probably my favorite bit.
It's a good line.
I think that's really just that. Yeah, the dense. I just think that's a really cool, weird, erotic, but more weird than erotic image.
Yeah. Which is the good kind of erotic.
Yeah, where it's kind of a little bit sexy, but it's more just weird.
Yeah.
That's the best kind of erotic, definitely. Hi, Dad.
All right.
All right, on to poem number last.
Poem number last.
Ah, yes, the most complicated and rich of all the poems we have covered.
Oh, God. All right. Hold on. Let me find this one. Gotta go to Yahoo Answers.
Next time we find a poem that's not available online, let's just not do the poem unless it's really good.
Well, there was a lot of reasons why we maybe should have not done this poem.
Ow, 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 ow.
Did we admit that this Yahoo Answers might actually have the answer?
Yeah, we said that in the episode.
All right.
Oh, we knew.
All right, here we go. Nursery Rhyme by W.H. Auden. Their learned kings bent down to chat with frogs. This was until the battle of the bogs. The key that opens is the key that rusts. Their cheerful kings made toffee on their stoves. This was until the rotting of the loaves. The robins vanish when the ravens come. That was before the coaches reached the bogs. Now woolly bears pursue the spotted dogs. A witch can make an ogre out of mud. The woolly bears have polished off the dogs. Our bowls of milk are full of drowning frogs. The robins vanish when the ravens come. The blinded bears have rooted up the groves. Our poisoned milk boils over on our stoves. The key that opens is the key that rusts. All right. So I'll just get this out of the way. Chiasmus.
Yeah, that gets us nowhere. We don't need to talk about your Crasmus.
Chiasmus. No, I just want to say it as many times as I can right now because it's the only thing I have to say, man.
Okay. Well, something. So, unlike the other poems, we have been talking on and on about whether we missed something with this one.
Yeah, because we were pretty embarrassed that we got basically nothing out of it other than chiasmus.
But, in my research, I discovered a couple of things. One being, Auden does have a history of changing his poems as his life went on. The only change in this poem was in the original version, they were first blinded bears, then woolly bears, and then he switched those. Ooh.
Yes, yeah.
I can see why he switched them. Makes more sense to describe their woolliness, which would have been a perpetual quality, and then give their blindness happening later to create a sense of action and ambiguity, and also increase the confusion generated by the poem. Like, wait, how did the bears get blinded? What's going on?
Yeah, sure.
So I think it was a good change given what we think this poem was about, which is it's a nursery rhyme about how bad things happen. And people are awful, and history is about people hurting each other for no damn reason.
I'll just explain for those who haven't heard the episode. My shouting chiasmus is because chiasmus is a rhetorical structure. If you don't know, where the items in a list are repeated in reverse order. So, for instance, the title of our episode was A World Without Cats for Cats Without a World. So that's an example of chiasmus. And I think...
Did you say they had to be iams? They don't have to be.
I didn't say anything about iams.
Oh, I thought you said we're the iams of a poem.
No, I don't remember what I said, but it wasn't that.
Because that didn't make sense.
No.
Okay.
Items. I said items.
Items, or words, as the items of a poem are sometimes known.
Okay, all right. Maybe I should have said nouns. Because...
they could be verbs too.
Yeah, okay, fair
It's
enough.
literally
But
words here.
no, but it's not all of the words. I said items because I was trying to say the important
It's
words.
where you invert the sentence structure so that object and subject go in.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever. Who
Anyway,
cares?
the important point was that key crops up and it points us to chiasmus, this rhetorical structure, which is all over the poem. And so we started out our analysis thinking that that was like really going to open things up, and then it just didn't. You know, it's this.
Yeah, it's
I
being
mean,
like, oh yeah, you're looking for patterns in history. Here's the pattern. People are dicks.
yeah, and I think actually we probably said this at some point, but it kind of got lost in the muddle. But I actually do think that chiasmus is a nice illustration of that principle
Yeah,
because
actually.
you things look different, but if you look at it, it turns out it's just reversed like in a mirror.
Like oh, World War I ended with the Germans being in a very shitty economic situation. Now the Germans are doing shitty things to people. It's a chiasmus.
Right.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty smart. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think we were just expecting more.
No, actually, we didn't say that, did we? And that seems blindingly obvious now.
Yeah, no, it's that the oppressed become the oppressors. It's the cycle of history.
It appears to be different, but you've really just reversed
Yeah, you're
the
just
order.
switching dogs and bears, and of course he's using animals, which have, of course, he's using animals which represent nations, which was another thing that we touched on, but all of these animals definitely do represent nations. We found an old political cartoon that included all of them.
Yeah, but I think importantly,
It doesn't map to any particular historical event. It's just like, oh, who cares? The frogs are
yeah.
fighting the dogs, the bears. Who? It's
So you can't actually map you can't really map this with any real historical nation and expect to get anywhere with it. And that just is part of the point.
and it's stupid for us to think that even if there was like, oh, this is referring to the war of the English Civil War. I'm just thinking of random war. That one doesn't make sense, but
Yeah.
yes.
That it was somehow gonna
Like, oh, I
imbue
see.
this poem with new
They
meaning.
represent the Jacobites.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, no, it doesn't matter. It's the poem is actually a quite elegant nursery rhyme talking about how injustices are perpetuated because bad things happen. Then a witch makes an ogre out of mud. They, directs people's attentions towards a false threat built of nothing, but and the cycle continues, and everyone is screwed. So actually, it's not a stupid, simple poem.
Oh yeah. Oh, and the key that opens is the key that rusts. Right. You figure out the pattern. You think you figure out the pattern, but in fact, all you've figured out is the particular instance, and it's and it holds no more validity for the structure of the whole, because the order of things is always just rearranging.
Right. It's like, I figured out,
Oh, the Germans are the bad guys. I got it. Wait, no.
the key that opens is the key. And also, I just on a broader level, saying like, okay, great, you understand. All right.
Well, I guess if you read the key is saying, I guess you could also, no, I guess that probably isn't right, because I guess the key does have to be the chiasmus, the overall structure of history as this constantly reversing repetition.
Right. And I think, well, his point there, I think, is just like, okay, great, you figured out war is bad and people are jerks.
Right.
Yes, you've unlocked the secret. Woo.
Oh, okay. I get it. The key that opens is the key that rusts. You've unlocked the secret. what the hell do you do with the key after that? You put it in a drawer because who fucking cares? And then it rusts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the kings made toffee, the frogs poisoned them, some bears ate some oranges. We're all fucked at the end. Now you know, good job. Knowing that gets you nowhere.
All right, so I feel like we basically got there, but I think we got a little further now because our sight was, you know, closer to the ground now than we were able to put it before. So yeah, okay, that's what the poem is doing. I buy it.
It's not even that simple.
I mean,
it's simple. Like, I mean, we're annoyed because we couldn't dig into the individual word choice because the whole point was that the individual word choice was meaningless. Except insofar as much as like dog rhymes with bog and stuff like that.
Well, right. The meaning came out of that rhetorical structure that we analyzed in the beginning. There was just really we needed to link up that initial formal analysis with the final thematic analysis, and there's not really a middle ground in this poem. I mean, the specifics of the imagery of the animals and the witch and all of that are cool. They, you know, it's cool the way that they invoke this kind of fairy tale world that we can't entirely put together, which I think points to the fact that in a certain sense, a child's understanding of political history is superior to an adult's in this vision of the world, right? Because the child directly just assumes that that the actions of adults in the adult world are inscrutable and meaningless, and turns out they're right.
It seems to me that everybody's just hurting everybody else.
Right.
Me dad thinks, well, me dad must know the real reason it happens. I'll eat candy.
Who poisoned all me frogs?
Right. And it's really, and you know, like, and so you get this kind of darker adult reading of the poem, which is just like, no, it really is just a bunch of stupid shit happening and everyone's poisoning everybody and awful things are happening. And okay, we know that. Great. What do we do with that knowledge? Well, nothing. It's useless.
Yeah, we have kids and
we
sing them these nursery rhymes about how useless everything is, because what else are we going to do?
And we lose emotional connection with the fact that this cycle is just the meaningless perpetuation of people hurting each other. The key rusts, and once the key is rusted, I assume that it doesn't work. It can't open the door. We can't understand. Like, once you figured out that war is dumb and people are just hurting each other, you know that. And so the thing that lets you know that, the feelings, just kind of harden over, and you're just like, yeah, all right, let's go to war.
Yeah. Right.
Once you figured it out, you don't need the key anymore, and so you forget.
It's not as if
it's made of mud. You forget.
Right. It's not as if we or anyone today would be able to relate to this, but you know, I think once upon a time, anyway, the idea that political disillusionment, you know, could lead to resignationism would have been very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that Auden is very tapped into, I think, as a poet. You know, as a guy who, you know, growing up when he did was like, well, World War I happened. Oh, great. And now World War II. Yep.
So, you know, all right. So feelings on this. I like it. I don't, you know, it's not doing something that's interesting enough to me for me to really love it, but it's doing a thing that's not uninteresting, and it's doing it very well. And I don't blame it for our confusion in the way that I blame the heart crane.
Yeah, this one's on us.
This one's totally on us.
The poem told us what it was about, and we're like, but who are the bears?
Yeah.
Let's make a chart.
Right. I mean,
by the way, if you haven't seen my chart, go to the website. It is.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's real something.
Yeah. It's a masterpiece, a veritable chartra, if you will.
Well, I don't get that joke.
Chartres, the great cathedral?
I'm sorry, I don't know your fancy churches, Kier. I'll have to edit that out because it makes me look dumb. I'm not joking. I'm going to edit that out.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, where was I?
Actually, no, I have to leave it in because it makes us look pretentious if I don't.
It makes us look pretentious if you don't what?
If I don't leave it in, because it makes it sound like I understood, and everyone will be like, oh, these guys are making jokes that go over my head.
All right, man, whatever. I'll let you decide.
For all the mud ogres listening to the podcast.
You're definitely going to leave in this bit where we call the audience mud ogres, right?
Well, if they don't understand poetry, they're basically just mud ogres. Ogres so stupid that they think they can eat mud instead of food.
No, but okay. I mean, the point was, I feel like the initial reading of this poem really gave you pretty much everything you needed to understand about it. And then there was even this really cool way in which the rhetorical device that he points you towards underlines that theme and is woven throughout the poem. And it, as we proved, it doesn't take much to get to that level of analysis. So yeah, the poem is upfront about what it's trying to do, gives you a really cool device that underscores that theme, and we were just idiots.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think we kind of spoiled ourselves by picking very complicated poems up until this one.
Yeah.
Like, we started with Wallace Stevens, and then an even harder Emily Dickinson.
Right.
Okay, and then somehow even harder, but not harder in a good way, harder in a bad way, Hart Crane poem.
Yeah.
And then just an Auden poem that's doing a thing, does the thing, even gives you a little thing to do if you like analyzing poetry, where you see how the structure manifests the theme. And
Very
we're just
cool.
like, no, but it must be double secrets.
Yeah.
The dogs must symbolize the soul and the bog must be the mind.
No.
And we have recorded some episodes since then, and I think we've recalibrated.
Yeah. Like
to figure out the level the poem is working on.
Right. Like the Blake we analyzed, I think works on about the same level as this Auden poem, and we don't push it further.
Yeah.
Instead,
I go on a rant for an hour about God, I mean, you're not going to hear any of that, so it doesn't even matter.
Oh man, you really lost it though.
I really did lose it.
It's pretty amazing.
I was in a bad mood.
I don't even remember what that was about.
Neither do I. I think it was because there was another poetry podcast.
Yeah. Was it about capitalists?
I'm sure that featured into it.
It was definitely about elitism.
Yeah, and how I you know what? If I'm gonna bother to edit this out of the podcast, I'm not gonna bother recapping it here.
Yeah, okay,
that
fair enough.
Like a dummy thing to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
it just was. Are you forcing yourself to edit it now, huh?
Dumb mud ogres listening to our podcast like a bunch of rubes. I'm just giving myself work. I am literally just wasting my time right now, and then I'm wasting the same time in the future when I have to listen to this and wait for myself to say something interesting again.
All right, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Marker. We're doing relevant shit
I
again.
didn't put a marker at the beginning of that, so it's kind of useless. No, wait, it's not. Right, relevant stuff starts here. And then, okay. So moving onward. Okay.
All right. So those are the poems that we have published our analyses of so far. Yeah. I mean, I think that was good. I think this will be a nice thing to do going forward. And yeah, I think it's a good chance for us to get out of the mud a little bit and stand up like witch-made ogres and speculate a little bit more broadly. So I'm happy with this.
Yeah, no, it was a good thingy.
Yeah. Hope y'all enjoyed.
Of course, this has actually been exactly as long as all of our previous recordings have been.
But that's great because this was 4. So it should be 1/4 of this normally.
Right. Okay, maybe I'll put this. Okay, let me put in a little introduction at the beginning. So this episode is about a new format we did, which Kier just explained. So I'm jumping in here from the future, but not the super future when I'm editing the episode, between then and now. So the deal is that episodes that are called this in the future.
What is this?
What did we call it? We came up with a name for it.
Conclusions?
Right. Conclusions episodes in the future will be probably about 45 minutes to an hour long.
Or less.
Or less. Yeah, like the Blake one that we did.
Yeah, I can't imagine that our conclusions there will go over half an hour.
Yeah, unless we decide to discuss hiking or Harry Potter.
Right.
Which is fine if we do. Because you're listening to a podcast. If you don't want to hear people talk about random crap, listen to NPR. Don't listen to NPR. Listen to me. NPR doesn't love you. I love you.
Capitalists.
The stupid NPR capitalists. Made possible by a grant from the MacArthur Foundation.
More like the McCarthy Foundation.
I mean, I wish I could remember the name of a company that it's a for-profit organization that sponsored NPR, but I can't. Just that foundation, which is, I think you have to be nonprofit to be called a foundation.
I believe so. Or at the bottom of a building.
Right. Okay. So this has been EE Foam Poem. I did that on purpose. I thought it was funny in the episodes I've edited when I said the name wrong. This has been EE Phone Poem. Oh, remember to go to our website for reasons. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, anything like that. Send us emails. Draw us a picture of what you think the poem looks like. We'll post it on our blog.
Yeah, any charts or graphs
if you have any
want to
feedback
send in?
about what you'd like the podcast to be like, if the thing you want it to be like is shorter and better organized, that's not happening. But this is us trying to compromise in that direction. So if you want that, listen to the conclusions-y episodes. And if you want to just hear us rip out a poem's heart and eat it, then listen to the analyses episodes. Like us. Like us on
like us so much. We're really likable.
Like us on Facebook. Oh, leave reviews on iTunes. If you decide to buy a book of poems that we've talked about, or anything else on Amazon, we do have some links to an Amazon affiliate account on our blog that you can click on, and then some of the money that you spend on the thing will go to us. It doesn't cost you anything extra. but that would be good. We would appreciate that. Don't feel obligated, though, of course. But we would like it.
That's very, very nice of you.
We're doing this for free. I'm just gonna have to cut. I probably already cut.
All right.
So we're done.
Bye.
Good Borb.
All right.
Okay, good job.
Well done. Yeah. I'm really kind of afraid that this part of the podcast is just going to be so much better that there's not really going to be much of a point in us recording the other part.
Well, we have to figure out the poem here.
No, it's very necessary that we do the other part. But I just wonder how many people are going to prefer this part. Probably a lot. But whatever, that's good. That's fine.
Yeah, do you think I should release these on a separate feed or the same feed?
I was thinking that too, to make it easy for people who are never going to listen to the 2-hour one. But then what about the people who are? Like, I want them to be able to easily listen to this one. I guess we could do both.
Well, we could keep one feed that has both of them and then
Right.
But you know what? We can branch out to a new feed later if.
Yeah, okay. If we get a lot of feedback saying, like, everybody's just listening to these short ones.
Well, I mean, I'll know. I can see how many times each episode is downloaded.
Uh-huh.
So if I see, like, significantly more people downloading the short ones.
Then we could think about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Sounds good.
All right. Good stuff. So I guess next week we will just do this for... All right, so you're going to publish this one next?
I don't know.
I mean, that would make sense.
I might do the bishop next, but no, that doesn't make sense. I guess I'll do this one next.
I mean, do you want to just reminisce on the bishop and the Blake now so it's all done? Or do you want to put that off till next week?
Let's put it off. I have to clean the house.
All right. So next week we'll do our recap on those two. That'll be good because that won't add much to your editing load.
No.
Yeah, and then you can... Right. And then you'll release this one next, and then after that, we'll be able to start alternating.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that works. All right.
Okay.
Good job.
Yes, we did the thing.
We did the thing. Hope your dad likes it.
Yep, me too.
All right, man.
Okay, talk to you later.
Later.
Bye.